In September of 2020, two major things happened in my life that completely changed my trajectory. Number one, I discovered YouTube, as in I became a content junkie overnight. And number two, this guy, Floris Gierman, infiltrated my algorithm talking about running easy, which I translated to running slow, and to which I had absolutely no interest in doing. You see, I started running in March of 2020 with absolutely no background in running or sports. I'm a COVID runner, so I was doing it for health. But then I got the bug, and then I wanted to see how fast I could run, not how slow I could run. And the distance that I was trying to get faster at was at the 5K. And the only reason why was because on the treadmill that I used to run on, there was a 5K setting, so I was trying to get faster every time that I was running. Well, one day I decided I want to go for a run and see how far I could run without dying, and that ended up being somewhere around 13 miles. And I did that run in about 1 hour, 48 minutes, and some odd seconds. I couldn't walk for a week, and I swore I'd never do it again. Then my sister, Stacy, she tells me about this Hansen book, a Hansen Half Marathon book. Apparently, you can train for these things. Long story short, too late. I trained for another half marathon using the Hansen Half Marathon book, and this time I ran a half marathon time trial in 1 hour, 47 minutes, and some odd seconds. It was at this point that I thought speed was fixed, and I felt defeated. I felt hopeless. Depressed? Dramatic, but okay. I was willing to do anything to get faster. Enter Floris Gierman. I finally clicked on one of his videos, and he was talking to this man, Dr. Phil Maffetone, about the Maffetone Method. And so finally, here are the 8 things that I learned from these two individuals that helped me over the last 2 years to actually get faster. Number 1, the first thing that I learned was that my definition of easy was not their definition of easy. There were 2 different easies. See, my previous definition of easy came from that Hansen Half Marathon book. I got to choose my goal time, and based on the goal time that I was trying to run, I got easy paces prescribed to me. There was easy A, a 9:03 pace, easy B, a 9:40 pace, and then C, like a recovery pace in the 10-minute range. So, as a beginning runner, which pace do you think that I picked every single day of training? The 9:03. And when I look back at it, some days I was running in the 8:30s, and I was calling that easy. Now, these two studs, their definition, more specifically Dr. Phil Maffetone's definition of easy, was based off of heart rate. There's this theory, something called the 180 formula. Now, I had quite an aversion to this theory, right? Because not only did I not want to run any slower, I didn't want to spend any more money. And I would have to go out and buy a heart rate monitor, a chest strap, and link it to my watch, which I just bought. I didn't want to spend any more money, but I was desperate. So I did the dang thing, and I started my journey on the Maffetone Method. It turns out my actual easy pace, according to the 180 formula, when I run at that heart rate, is 10 minutes and 15 seconds and not 9 minutes and 3 seconds. However, after running the Maffetone Method for 2 months strictly at that heart rate, my pace kept getting faster and faster at that same easy effort, and eventually it was a 9:03. At this point, I decided to rerun that half marathon time trial, having done no speed work, and I ran it in 1 hour, 39 minutes, and 58 seconds. Yes, I got over 7.5 minutes faster, not doing anything, but just running easy, which leads me to point number 2. The second thing that I learned is that speed is not fixed. It is not genetic. I wasn't just born this way. Can't do much about being 5 foot 6 inches, but speed we can do something about. Now, I should have probably already known this, but I didn't, so thank you to these two guys for enlightening me. So after 2 years of doing the Maffetone Method, that easy pace that was 10:15 went down to just about 8 minutes a mile. So I continued to get faster, which leads me to number 3. The third thing that I learned from these guys is that you can get faster at any age, especially if you have no background in running. Even if you start running at 35 or 40 years old, you can PR well into your 50s. And it's been nothing but PRs for me. For example, that 1:39:58, I hopped into a training block and I ran the Austin Half Marathon, my first ever race, and I ran it in 1:34:39. The following year at the Woodlands Half Marathon, I ran a 1:30:30, and then this year at the Austin 3M Half Marathon in January, I ran a 1:23:15. 58, which leads me to number 4. The fourth thing that I learned is that when my pace improved at easier paces, then when I put in a moderate effort, my pace was faster, and when I put in a faster effort, my pace was faster. And even when I ran at faster paces, I could hold it longer because my endurance was improving. Now, don't get me wrong, the best way to train for a 5K is to do a 5K training block full of speed work, but after that base is built. So early on, especially as a beginner though, the best way for me to improve my VO2 max was just by running easy. So would you say this is the easy way to get fast? Ignore him, you get used to it. Now, you may be asking yourself, why are we talking about running fast? I thought we were talking about low heart rate training. Well, this was the fifth thing that I learned from these dudes. The Maffetone Method is low heart rate training, and it also involves high heart rate training. Speed work is a part of the Maffetone Method. And this is really one of the biggest misconceptions with the Maffetone Method. So for me, for example, when I did get my easy pace down to about a 9:03, I built in speed work when I was training for that Austin half marathon. My easy pace during that time dropped down to about an 8:41 a mile. After the half marathon, I went back to a Maffetone block and my pace dropped down to about an 8:13 to an 8:17 per mile. And then after that, I built in some speed work, and then it came down again to about an 8-minute mile. So I would fluctuate between base building and then working in some speed work. This is called periodization. Now, these two guys weren't the first ones to discover periodization or to talk about it. They weren't the Lois and Clark of periodization, but it's how I found out during the pandemic. Okay, moving on, number 6. The sixth thing that I learned from these two guys was that I need about 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. And if I'm running 50 plus miles or 80 kilometers a week, then probably more towards the 9 hours of sleep a night. As a consequence, I built in 2 practices. The first one is I tried to PR my sleep on my days off if I knew I had a day off the next day to see how many hours I could get. Number 2, I realized when I looked at it underneath the microscope or magnifying glass or some sort of vision enhancing device was that when I say I sleep 7 hours, according to my Garmin watch and then my sleep app and all that stuff, it's really probably more like 6.5 or 6. So if I aim for 8, maybe I'll get 7. And if I aim for 9, maybe I'll get 8. So I started trying to aim for an extra hour because I don't sleep as much as I think I do. Now, I can't move on to number 7 without also addressing when it comes to sleep that there is a limit to the amount of sleep that I'm gonna be able to get because time is finite and I have 3 children who would like to have a father, and I feel like I'm the right guy for the job on that front. And you know, I live in South Texas, so if I'm gonna get my run in, it's gonna be at 5 or 6 in the morning, because if I go out for a run at noon, I would spontaneously combust into flames on the trails. There's usually like wildfire warnings. And so just to save everybody, I'm probably only going to be sleeping about 7 hours a night. The 7th thing that I learned from these two guys is that running isn't always about being fast. I know, it sounds like some bullshit. I know, it sounds like something that people just say. Slow people, to be exact, okay? But it's true. And I hated arriving here, trust me, right? Because I had this desire suddenly to try to get faster, only to be returned to the run for your health checkout line. But that's what these two guys taught me. Running is about being healthy. As a consequence, nutrition matters. Now, I don't subscribe to the low carb approach like Dr. Phil Maffetone. However, running 50 miles a week or 60 miles a week doesn't give me the right to eat a $8 triple deck stacked strawberry glazed croissant. And really no one has the right to charge $8 for a croissant like that. But anyway, my point is, you know, because I run 60 miles a week doesn't give me the right to slide in underneath the piñata and eat all of the candy for my children, you know, to help them because I'm an awesome father. But instead, if I focus on eating less processed food and more whole foods, then I feel better. Even when I'm not running, I feel lighter. And so the Maffetone Method, the MAF approach, is a holistic approach to being a healthier athlete, which leads me to number 8. The 8th and final thing that I've learned from these two dudes as far as this list is concerned is that mental health matters. The Maffetone Method is a holistic approach. So let's talk about stress. Stress affects our lives, stress affects our hearts, therefore stress affects our running. So how can I improve it? I ask myself this question. Well, for starters, we can go back to the two things we just talked about, which is nutrition and the quality of sleep. More important than that, and what I want to highlight in this number, is prayer and meditation time. In the morning, I give myself 15 to 30 minutes for prayer, and at night, I give myself some time for meditation, which helps build some self-awareness and gives me an eternal perspective on life. I feel gratitude for my family, for my opportunities at work, for my coworkers, to be able to run, to be healthy, because ultimately it doesn't matter how fast I run a race. It doesn't matter if you finally decide to subscribe to the channel after watching so many of my awesome videos without subscribing, you freeloader. Zero resentment. Just love. Thanks for watching.